I have determined that it is in our vital national interest to send an additional 30,000 U.S. troops to Afghanistan.
Americans, feeling let down by Barack Obama's escalation of the war in Afghanistan in 2009, should take careful note of those who welcomed yet another surge. It might help them to identify the source of their seemingly endless wars. For instance, in a Washington Post opinion piece, William Kristol described Obama's West Point speech as encouraging. It was a good thing, he said, that Obama was finally speaking as a war president. But if the comments on the Post website are anything to go by, few ordinary Americans take Kristol's armchair warmongering seriously anymore. After all, as one poster quizzically wrote, the column by William Kristol, the neocon, was wrong about everything from 2000 to 2008. Although Kristol, like the rest of the neocons, erred about Iraq's WMDs and Saddam's links to al-Qaeda and 9/11, it would be a fatal error indeed to dismiss him as a fool. In order to understand what motivates Bill Kristol's professed hyper-patriotism with its consistently disastrous prescriptions, it's worth recalling how his father, Irving Kristol, reacted to Vietnam War critic Senator George McGovern. The presidential contender's proposed cut in U.S. military expenditure would, according to the godfather of neoconservatism, drive a knife into the heart of Israel. Jews don't like big military budgets, the elder Kristol explained in a Jewish publication in 1973. But it is now an interest of the Jews to have a large and powerful military establishment in the United States. American Jews who care about the survival of the State of Israel have to say, no, we don't want to cut the military budget. It is important to keep that military budget big so that we can defend Israel, he said. Following his father's advice, William Kristol has been a fervent supporter of massive U.S. military spending. In 1996, he co-authored with Robert Kagan an influential neocon manifesto titled Towards a Neo-Reaganite Foreign Policy. It recommended that America should pursue a vision of benevolent hegemony as bold as Reagan's in the 1970s and wield its authority unabashedly. The defense budget should be increased dramatically. Citizens should be educated to appreciate the military's vital work abroad, and moral clarity should direct a foreign policy that puts the heat on dictators and authoritarian regimes. In response, another influential opinion maker, Charles Krauthammer, hailed Kristol and Kagan as the main proponents of what you might call the American Greatness School. It is hardly a coincidence, however, that all three advocates of American greatness care passionately about what Irving Kristol euphemistically referred to as the survival of the State of Israel, or that many of those dictators and authoritarian regimes just happen to stand in the way of Israeli hegemony in the Middle East. The following year, Kristol and Kagan co-founded the Project for a New American Century, PNAC, a pressure group which sought to advance their neo-Reaganite vision. In the late 1990s, they did this mainly by writing letters to Bill Clinton, urging him to oust Saddam Hussein. In September 2000, PNAC published Rebuilding America's Defenses, in which they famously acknowledged that the process of transformation is likely to be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event, like a new Pearl Harbor. 1 year later, they got their wished-for new Pearl Harbor on September the 11th. The mass murder of almost 3,000 Americans was, as Benjamin Netanyahu indelicately put it, was very good for Israel. Immediately, Kristol's Weekly Standard began linking Iraq to the attacks. Writing in the American Conservative, Scott McConnell explained the strategy. Their rhetoric, which laid down a line from which the magazine would not waver over the next 18 months, was to link Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden in virtually every paragraph to join them at the hip in the minds of the readers. The Saddam Must Go campaign began in a Crystal and Kagan editorial as far back as 1997, became so relentless that Washington Post columnist Richard Cohen dubbed it Crystal's War. The Iraq War, of course, has also been called Wolfowitz's War, but it could just as aptly have been named after Pearl, Feith, Libby, Zelikow, Lieberman, or any of the other pro-Israeli insiders who took America to war by way of deception. In Irving Crystal R.I.P., antiwar.com editor Justin Raimondo described Crystal's legacy as war, war, and yet more war as far as the eye can see. Unless Americans soon realize that they've been deceived by those for whom American greatness is merely a means to advance the survival of the State of Israel, that legacy promises to be an enduring one.